Okay, you're on, Anna.
Hi, good afternoon. Oh gosh, what is it today? I like to record what day it is. June 15th, yeah. 2021. I am Anna Bruffy. I am the president of the First Empathy Surplus Congress of Wilmington, Ohio. I would like to go around and have everyone do a quick introduction of themselves, and we'll go ahead and get started. Chuck?
My name is Chuck Watts. I'm a past president of this Congress and president of the Empathy Surplus Project Foundation, retired Edward Jones financial advisor. I live in Wilmington, Ohio, and glad to be here. Maribeth?
Maribeth Bevis. I'm from the northern side of Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a senior fitness specialist. I may have to go inside. It may be too noisy outside. Anita?
I'm Anita Lewis. I live in Bellbrook, Ohio, have a farm. I'm a nurse, co-founder of the Empathy Surplus Project. And Anna?
So I am Anna Bruffy again, and I live in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I am the owner of Seaside Fiber Arts, which sustainably dyes yarn and other fiber material. I am also the COO of Sustainable Development Enterprises, who works in Guyana, and our goal is to focus on micro, medium, and small business incubators.
Greg.
Hi, Greg.
Hello,
welcome. Greg. We're just doing a quick introduction.
Give me a second here.
No problem. No problem. Glad you can make it.
Yeah, I always tell you when I can't.
Yeah.
Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. So my name is Greg Kennedy. I am an HR professional, also the president-elect of the Surplus Project. And I live in Painesville, Ohio. And I'm currently trying to get my name on the ballot to run for council at large in Painesville.
Wonderful. It's great.
Cool.
Yeah, great. Here,
I'll pull up the thing.
Yeah. There you go.
If I can find it. So our Empathy Surplus Congress is a community of practice. Every day we promote the idea of stronger people, progressive markets, better futures, effective government of buying for people, and mutual responsibility by practicing four empathic activities. We inwardly digest and use the latest brain insights of Dr. George Lakoff to frame daily caring conversations to promote human rights. Invest in weekly congressional hearings about how we apply Dr. Lakoff's insights to advance caring policy directions. Implement caring policy directions through partnerships with ethical businesses, effective government task forces, and other caring society organizations, and invite others to join us to promote politics of care.
Okay, great. How was everybody's week?
It's been a tough week for me, actually.
How many signatures have you gotten?
I have the acquired amount of signatures, which is 50. I think I have 70 something signatures, but I still need to get a few more, only because I don't know who are registered voters. And I know that if they're not registered voters, their signature becomes invalid. So I just want to kind of pad myself a little bit before I turn in my signatures and file my petition, just to ensure that I can at least get my name on the ballot. And once I know for sure my name's going to be on the ballot, then I will have to, start developing some campaign strategies.
So, Greg, I've participated in lots of campaigns, and I've been to several counties' websites, Board of Election websites, and found a list of registered voters.
Oh, okay.
There should be a list of registered voters at your Board of Elections website.
Okay. All right.
You know, because you can create a walking list. At least you used to be able to, you know, a walking list of your precinct, et cetera, that kind of thing.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So give me a second. I need to write that down because if I don't, I'll forget. Give me a second.
Yeah.
So while he's doing that, I was getting ready for our, we've got a Empathy Surplus Project Foundation board meeting tonight. And that's at 7, and I was getting ready. I was reading the Keela stuff, and they have they released a new enhancement to our Keela tool, which allows participants to count their interactions. You know, and if you're using Keela, you know, the interaction is if you've emailed somebody or they've emailed you on Keela, if you've entered, you know, if you've inputted something. Anyway, I've done a couple of email blasts, and so my interactions over the last month are over 1,200.
Wow. That's great.
Awesome.
So it's a really cool tool. So if you haven't found it, look it up.
It's wonderful,
So,
Chuck.
Mary Beth.
That's wonderful. Oh, you're on mute. Didn't hear you.
Did I say 12,000? 1,200.
Oh, still good.
Still a lot.
Still a lot.
1,200.
I think you're still in first place. I don't think.
Yeah. Right. No doubt. Yeah.
So we're talking about our activities. I've had grandchildren for the past 5 or 6 days, so I didn't get much of anything done, other than just corralling grandchildren and keeping kids from killing each other. So.
How many grandkids?
Well, we have 6. I only had 3 of the 6, but 2 of them, 2 older boys who are just, oh my. I just don't have words to describe what they are.
We can imagine.
I'll just put it this way. I gave them, I bought a piano for their house, and they are so wild. And I don't even know how you do this. If you're familiar with a piano, they have broken the black keys off. I don't even know how that happens.
Broken the black keys, huh?
Yeah, they just snapped them off. They're wooden. I mean, it's like a Wurlitzer piano. So anyway, they demand all of my attention when they're here and to keep the house from being set on fire.
Man.
So I didn't get anything done except.
How old are your kids, grandkids?
The ones that were here, the oldest was 11, and then his brother is just turned 7 this week. And then I have my granddaughter who'll be 8 in July. So
Do you remember the Dennis? Are you old enough to remember Dennis the Menace?
Yeah.
I was Dennis the Menace when I was, and I got a Dennis the Menace doll one year for Christmas. You know,
boys would give you a run for your money, Dennis.
That's right.
So done otherwise than just keeping them corralled. Now let's see, Anita, how about you?
Oh, I have been, well, I continue to support our family from Malawi, which is a big deal, a pretty big deal. And I've been meeting with people. I met with my old business partner, Dan, and I met with my solar man that I'm trying to get a relationship going with, and Julie, who joined with us a week or 2 ago. We had a great meeting yesterday. So I'm still trying to keep touch with the friends and the ones that are being positively progressive. So, how about you, Anne?
I have reached out to my new friends again, and I have one lady that is welcome to join our group, and so hopefully she'll join us next week. Her name's Jacqueline. She's very, very nice. And I had met a new group of people very vaguely though, but hopefully I'll be able to connect with them as well. So I had a good week otherwise. My husband was on staycation, so that was a good time. He had his birthday on Saturday, so it was a good time.
Did you do anything special?
Yes. We one of his friends from high school had thrown him a party at a bar and got Chris up and singing on the stage. So yeah,
was it a regular bar, or was it a bar that had poles?
No, we don't have that kind of money.
Just checking.
No, we went to a place called Scandals.
Okay.
Mom's Kitchen Scandals. That's actually what it's called.
Sounds like it has poles.
Yeah, it does. As a place, where local bands go up and play, and so it was a lot of fun. Chris had a lot of fun. So we had about 30 or 40 friends that showed up, and I actually stayed outside on their patio or whatever, because they had so many strobe lights in there. So that's the one tough thing about being epileptic. That's for sure.
I was about to say, that's got to be hard for you with the strobe.
You can't exactly go clubbing anymore. So
no.
I had to actually had to wait in between songs for the strobes to stop. And then I went in, I found the back door, and I put blinders on. I made a blind for the back door. People are trying to stop me and say hi. I'm like, no. I made it, and we had a really good time. So
that's good. Glad to hear that.
Yeah, I had a good time. So Chuck, would we like to start our reading for this week? Or do we have something else?
My word or phrase is Minnesotans promoted human rights. Minnesotans promoted human rights. Are we going to read this section, by the way?
Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah. It's 8-2 or 3?
8-3.
8-3. Thank you.
I found this to be a really great section.
This was a fantastic section. I gotta be honest. I didn't write a testimonial today because I've been so busy, but this section really had me thinking.
Yeah. So who's George and who's Elizabeth?
I can be Elizabeth this time.
Maribeth or Anita want to be George?
Okay, I'll be George. Okay.
Okay. So chapter, what was it? Your Brain's Politics, chapter 8.3, Embodied Communication. Elizabeth says, now we know how people think they communicate, but that in fact do not communicate. Let's give our readers a break and tell them how people do communicate.
We use our own individual conceptual systems, our own set of rules for speaking, and our own set of metaphors and frames. And if we happen to speak to someone whose conceptual system largely overlaps with us, then we can experience shared reality. The more overlap we have in our rules for speaking, metaphors, and frames, the higher their chances will be that they will understand each other.
You're saying this is about shared reality, not objective reality?
Humans have no access to realities that lie outside of their perception and are therefore independent of their cognitive processes. We cannot experience realities that objectively exist in the world independent of our own human cognitive apparatus. To us, the only reality that exists is the reality that our minds and brains allow us to perceive. There's a simple reason for that. We have to process the world in order to understand it. Our brains process all incoming information. So the structure of our brains and minds will impact how we perceive incoming information.
That's right. Our knowledge of the world is always dependent on the workings of our conceptual system. But hold on, to our readers, this may sound as if we are disputing the existence of the real world and joining the relativist school of thought. Go ahead. Sorry.
But we aren't, by no means. The world is real, and the ways in which our bodies and conceptual systems process the world are equally real. It wouldn't cross my mind to contest the notion that the world is real. We all live in this world and interact with it on a daily basis. And our physical, social, and interpersonal experiences in this factually existing world influence our conceptual systems in significant ways. So, cognitive science research is about embodied realism, and it belongs neither with strict relativist nor objectivist philosophical schools of thought.
So, since people's brains and experiences are similar, we acquire a lot of the same conceptual structures, metaphors, frames, and so on. But we also have experiences that are unique to individuals or groups, for instance, those based on the specifics of our bodies, linguistics, experiences, and culture.
And such differences in experience lead to differences in the conceptual templates that govern our reasoning. Some realities are easier to share because they are based on conceptual structures that all humans acquire. But sometimes it's hard to create shared reality because people don't all share the same experiences in their lives. But one thing is clear, the world is real and people understand it through their bodies and brains.
So the theory that words can adequately describe the world as it exists, independent of humans, is a myth?
That theory falls apart the moment you consider embodied metaphoric reasoning. If I say to you, house prices are on the rise, then my words don't actually depict the world as it exists. I employ a metaphor. And this metaphor is the outcome of experiences I have had in this world. In this specific case, it's the experienced correlation of quantity and verticality.
That doesn't explain yet why Americans wouldn't have one shared understanding of common political terms, such as freedom.
Well, the meaning we attribute to the word freedom depends on what frames and metaphors our conceptual system is using. And there is a lot of wiggle room in the way we interpret what freedom is, because the concept is essentially contested.
So Minnesotans promoted human rights. That's my word or phrase. And so Anita, do you have a word or phrase?
I do. It would be shared understanding of common political terms such as democracy. Miriam? No, not Miriam. I'm sorry, Maribeth.
So Maribeth, can you hear us? It's all you, Maribeth.
maybe move on to Anne.
Anna?
This section was actually a little confusing to me, so I'd like to pass.
So,
Maribeth,
yeah. Oh, there she is. Yeah.
you have a word or phrase, Maribeth?
She's on mute.
Right.
She needs to look up. What is she doing?
She's going inside.
Oh, okay. She's moving. Okay. Well,
So here comes Miriam. So Greg, do you have a word or phrase?
I do. Understanding comes with a shared reality.
Understanding comes. So, hey, Miriam,
Hey.
we're doing words or phrases.
Oh,
How you doing?
good. This is Chevy, by the way.
Chevy.
Debbie.
Chevy's hitting the road.
Chevy Motor.
Yeah.
I had something. We're on 8.3.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, the world is real and people understand it through their bodies and brains.
Okay, Mary Beth. You got a word or phrase, Mary Beth? Have you got a word
Maybe
or
have
phrase,
it.
Mary Beth?
She may be having some computer issues.
Yeah, I think so. Mary Beth, do you want to log out and log back in? Maybe that'll help your reception. That's frustrating.
Yeah. You're on mute. You're on mute, Mary Beth.
So while she's wrestling with that, I'll go ahead and read my thing here. Let me pull up my. Mary Beth, are you with us now? No? Okay, so Minnesotans promoted human rights. In fact, they did so when they elected Ilhan Omar to the U.S. House of Representatives. Moreover, Omar is the first African refugee to ever be elected to the U.S. Congress. Consequently, it's no surprise that human rights, or the lack of them, would be a reality she shared with her family, her fellow refugees, and now the people of Minneapolis. And shared reality is the topic of this week's reading of Your Brain's Politics, chapter 8.3, by Drs. George Lakoff and Elizabeth Whaling. However, according to John Schwartz, a reporter for The Intercept, Omar drew criticism from both party members and the U.S. Secretary of State during a House Foreign Affairs Committee meeting. And the criticism came when she asked U.S. Secretary of State Blinken how victims of human rights abuses in Palestine and Afghanistan were to find justice since the U.S. and Israel blocked them from the International Criminal Court when they were denied access to their state courts. Minnesotans promoted human rights, but human rights are a shared reality, not an objective reality. Here's what Dr. Lakoff says about shared reality. Humans have no access to realities that lie outside of their perception and are therefore independent of their cognitive processes. Lakoff continues, we cannot experience realities that objectively exist in the world independent of our human cognitive apparatus. To us, the only reality that exists as the reality that our minds and brains allow us to perceive. Lakoff concludes, there's a simple reason for that. We have to process the world in order to understand it. Our brains process all incoming information. So the structure of our brains and minds will impact how we perceive incoming information. Minnesotans promoted human rights. They did so through their representative, Ilhan Omar, in a straightforward, non-judgmental way when she asked the Secretary of State a human rights question. However, Omar was criticized by well-meaning people whose brains have not been structured by the language of human rights or the experience of human rights abuses or conversations. So the challenge for human rights advocates is how to create human rights shared experiences. And that's why our Empathy Surplus Congress encourages our members to participate in local human rights pocketbook ventures. So that's it for me. Here comes Maribeth back. Anita?
Well, I thought I understood the term democracy, one person, one vote. Last Friday, I met up with some old friends at our favorite pie shop on Wilmington Avenue. And one gentleman started talking about liquid democracy. And wow, I mean, I'd never heard of that one, liquid democracy. And, but these friends of mine, this group at the pie shop, it was me. So I'm an elder, white, female, nurse, adventurer. There's Harry, who's an American Indian, male, thin, elder, kind, well-connected. Sam, a middle-aged white male, creative, independent, caring, respectful. Nick, an elder white male, a singer, an editor, friendly. And Bill, an elder white male, strong, ethical, adventurous, charming. And as an example of, well, we all have our neural pathways that process the words human rights, but each neural pathway is different. And we, like us, we come together as trusted friends, but when the subject comes up, we're all enthusiastically supporting protecting human rights, except for Bill. He's not against human rights. He just doesn't feel the need to work on issues related to human rights. And I wonder, why is that? And I think, well, maybe it's because he's 6'8" tall. He's handsome. He's white, male, American citizen. So Bill won the lottery of social chance in many different ways. But he doesn't feel, he's not driven, to work on human rights. And he's ethical and he does a lot in his community. He tutors youth, he counsels prisoners. He's wonderful. After the 2019 tornado, he spent a whole week with a chainsaw, cleaning up trees for other people. But he is not driven to think about preserving or protecting human rights. It was our American Indian friend who told us about liquid democracy. And he also started talking about this brand new idea, new to him and everybody else except me, about the circular economy. So, I held my tongue about the circular economy and I just let him talk on, and let them hear what he had to say. Coming
about 30
from
seconds.
Perspective. So anyway, we all have our own individual histories and we're all at different developmental stages, of maturation. And talking with my friends is just a joy, especially when we discover a shared reality and when we feel that someone else truly understands us. That's it.
Maribeth is back.
Good. Good.
you have a word or phrase that you want to expound on?
Well, my phrase that stuck out was embodied realism. And I think that really kind of covers a lot of territory, because it does speak to your experiences, cultural influences, all kinds of things that create your reality. And it kind of brought a thought to my head about my father. And my father was a World War II veteran. And at the tender age of 18, which now I know his brain was not even developed yet. It wasn't. We know that the brain doesn't develop fully until sometimes in the 20s. And I'll back up. My father, who was really not, I wouldn't call him a racist at all. I mean, he you know, we had a family of color move in the neighborhood, and my parents were the first ones to invite them to dinner, and were very accepting. And you know, it was just not in his makeup to be that way. But he hated Japanese. He hated all things Japanese. And it wasn't until he was in his 80s that I figured out why. At the tender age of 18, he went off to World War II, and the first island they landed on, and he, you know, and he probably had post-traumatic stress. You know, now that I think back on it, probably, and they didn't identify it, they didn't treat it. But, and my sister would argue with him. They would get in big fights about it. And so one day I said, Dad, when did this start? You know, it's that key question, when, not why, but when. The first island they landed on, they took from the Japanese. And here he was 18, and his first assignment with his other men there, they had to go into this tunnel and clean it out. What the Japanese had done, they had taken all the prisoners of war, stuffed them in this tunnel, and set it on fire before they left. And that permanently scarred him. And you know, and I realized in that moment, there's nothing I'm going to say that's going to make him embrace the Japanese culture, because that damaged him in a way that I can't fix. And I think, you know, and that helped me understand sometimes when I speak to people and they're angry and they're bitter, there's something broken that I'm probably not going to be able to fix, but I can love their humanity. I can love their brokenness, and I can try to be kind and understanding. And sometimes that's the best we can do, because their reality is never going to be my reality. You know, they're never going to see things the way I see it. And so how do we move forward, and how do we talk to people that have had a bitter experience that has jaded them so much that there is hatred in their hearts from some experience? And, you know, what do we do with that? So that realism, you know, that embodied realism that we can't experience, I can't experience. Greg has probably experienced racism in his life, and I will never know what that feels like. So my reality can never be what Greg's is. And Anna has felt insecure because of her epilepsy, and I will never understand that. So the best I can offer is empathy, and try to help others have empathy. So that's kind of what I took from that embodied reality. You know, how do I step out of my little shell and try to at least in some way experience why other people are where they are in their reality. That's what I got from it. Miriam, I don't know who's gone and who hasn't, because I'm having internet woes.
Yeah.
Well, I can go. My word or phrase was, the world is real and people understand it through their bodies and brains. And, you know, I'm piggybacking on what Maribeth just said. What impresses me about George Lakoff, or what's impressing me right now, is how physically, you know, our physical bodies embody our experiences and our biases and our subconscious brain. And yeah, that's the structure that gets built into the brain, is through our physical experiences and you know, traumas, but also love and affection, and, you know, taking care of our bodies. And that's all what we learn as we're growing up, and it becomes part of our brain pathways. And so it would, quote unquote, make sense to someone who had been nurtured and taken care of in their bodies, you know, in those first years and on up, and taught to take care of themselves and their bodies and other people through various ways. And so it makes sense that hearing about human rights would resonate with them, and you would get on board, you know, yeah, we should talk about human rights and taking care of one another. And that's what democracy is, you know, pooling our resources so we can take care of one another. But a person who's been neglected or abused or whatever wouldn't have that in them, and not the physical reality of it. I've been listening to I've been watching a really good Netflix called High on the Hog, which is, and there's a book called High on the Hog too, which is about Black cooking in the United States and how it's built our, you know, way of eating in the United States. And this young man starts in Africa, Western Africa, and traces it all the way through South Carolina, Texas. I'm in the middle of watching it, but it is powerful, and it is physical, and it is eating, and you know, it's how they took care of each other through food, and it bled out into the community of the United States of America. So it's a very interesting one. Okay, that's it. Greg, how about Greg?
Sure. So understanding is it, what did I say? Understanding creates a shared reality. Or I said something like that. I can't remember what I said, but it made me realize, his whole chapter made me realize that as long as our conception of how we communicate, the frames in which we communicate, the metaphors that we use and the rules that we use to communicate, as long as there's no overlap, then we won't have understanding. And so I started thinking about the people that have a different perspective than I do. And I started thinking, how can, from a Venn diagram perspective, if there are two circles of understanding and they're not overlapping, what can I do to push these circles together so they can overlap, so we can achieve a shared reality and understanding? And the answer is, I don't know. Saturday, as I was walking around collecting signatures, I came upon a woman who, you know, I used my same line. Hi, my name is Greg Kennedy. I live, you know, at 1362 Elizabeth Boulevard, and I'd like to run for city council. And you know, if you don't mind, I'd appreciate it if you'd sign my petition so I can get my name on the ballot. Well, she said, well, I need to know whether you are pro-life or pro-choice before I sign. And I said, well, that's a good question. I said, I don't consider myself pro-life or pro-choice. I think it's a human right. And then she said, so you think it's a human right to kill another person? And I said, no, that's not, that's morally wrong to kill another person. But she said, well, but you said you would allow that. And I said, no, I never said I would allow that. I said, it's a choice, it's a woman's choice to either keep a pregnancy or terminate it. So it was a very long debate, and it was not contentious. She appreciated me being, you know, very, you know, empathetic in reference to, you know, her position. But what I said was, I said, ma'am, this is not a black and white argument. There's so many shades of gray here. And I said, I would never advocate for a man to rape a woman, but I would not advocate a woman to use abortion as a form of birth control either, because from a science perspective, that's difficult on a woman's body. She should never do that. But if we decide as people to start making decisions about what a woman does with her body, where does that stop? Okay, where does that stop? So we will start making decisions for people in other aspects of their lives, and another aspect of their life, and then another aspect of their life. Where does it stop? And she said, I don't know. And I said, well, where's the middle ground? And she goes, I don't know. And I go, I don't know either. But I do know that this is not
About 30
an
seconds.
issue. This is not an issue. This is not a black and white issue. This is an issue of shades of gray. She didn't sign my petition, and I was okay with that because I was not going to give up my perspective just in order to get a signature. So, but anyway, I realized that, you know, in order to achieve understanding, we need to push those, we need to get those circles to overlap. So,
So Anna, are you still passing?
I can't see this from a political point of view. All I can see it as, and I'm glad actually Maribeth said something about it, as a person-to-person point of view, just on how understanding one another's experiences. 'Cause obviously everybody's different. And so it says right here, since people's brains and experiences are similar, we acquire a lot of the same conceptual structures, metaphors, frames, and so on. So although we may talk the same, and although we watch the same show or listen to politics, it's always interpreted to us differently from person to person. So I don't have much to elaborate on that, but that's kind of what I pulled out of this. Some people pulled politics, but I didn't. So
it's both, Anna.
Yeah. So, but I don't have much else to say.
So one thing Anna said, and something that Greg said last week, and then just the Venn diagram that kind of, you know, I'm reminded that the word politics or political has so many different meanings. And one of the things that I'm reminded about is conservatives have, or conservative think tanks have denigrated the word political in politics. So it's meant to be a bad thing. And Lakoff in several places has told us that any conversation that you're having is a political conversation because it has to do with human well-being. You know, nobody says at coffee about, you know, their new car that you know, you ought to like my new car because it's bad. You know, everybody's opinion is expressed because they believe it's correct, and that's a political conversation and a moral conversation. We have a perspective, you know, and that's a political with a little p, and moral with a little m conversation. And it really blows my mind when you hear people, well, like today, I was watching the news. Eric Swalwell, who was House of Representative from California, who's was the target of an investigation during the Trump years from the Department of Justice. And he said, you know, they politicized yada, yada, yada. You know, well, you know, there's a great example of of, of making politics a bad thing. And I wonder, how could he have said it differently so that politics is not the bad thing? You know, because that's really politics and morality, those things that my mama used to say, you know, are not acceptable topics for conversation. You know, that's really all human beings have to work out our differences. It is our morality and our politics, you know, our opinions, our good.
So it sounds like he was equating politics with dirty tricks.
Right, and it happens a lot.
Yes.
You know,
right.
and politicians on both sides, but I think it was, you know, from what I read, that conservatives really want to talk about politics as a bad thing because it helps their cause. You know, it helps shift the argument, well, politics is so bad we should not trust public government, you know, because only private government is good, corporate government, you know, so you shouldn't trust public government, you know, and so, well, if I can't trust it, you know, and so we get really, you know, how do we recapture, you know, how do we articulate what we think they're saying without denigrating that word? Because if we, you know, if we are talking about public government, you know, there's either political solutions or there's civil war solutions. I'd much rather have the political solutions.
I think, you know, Greg has a really good way of, yeah, I think Greg has a really good way of talking about it, you know, and I'm going to think more about the circles coming together, whether that's even possible or not. But, you know, talking about it as, well, how are we going to take care of each other? You know, how are we going to do it? Here's one way we could do it. And, you know, and you could talk about government, you know, if it's government of, by, and for the people, you have a voice in it, and I have a voice in it, and everybody has a voice in it. If it's a corporate body ruling us or taking control, we don't have a voice in that. Only the board has a voice in that. So, you know, you could talk about it that way. Well, how are we going to take care of each other? Because we do need to do that. We all need to drive on the roads. We all need a better train system, you know, like they have in Europe. We all need a way to deal with nuclear waste so we don't destroy ourselves. You know, there's so many problems to work on. So how are we going to do that in a ethical, caring way? And I think I hear Greg saying those kinds of things as he's been going through this process of thinking about, you know, running for this office. And so I'm going to think more about the circles. Is there a way to push them? I don't.
Well, you know, one of the things is when you're engaging like Greg did, you know, he and that woman had a shared experience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they shared a reality for the briefest of times, you know, and then they parted circles. And I think Lakoff would say that those are the kind of conversations that may be ongoing. Well, you know, and the best that we can do is to state where we are, you know, in a respectful way.
Yes.
You know, in a way, you know, with a low voice. You know, when my daughter used to go off, we wouldn't say stop whining. We would say use a low voice. You know, talk in a low voice. You know, but in a low voice, calm, having a conversation and stating what you really want and believe. You
She
know?
actually thanked me for that. She actually thanked me for that too.
Exactly. And
That's
so,
great.
and so now you're a respected person who
Right.
she might even, you know, the vote's secret. She might even vote for you
Right.
Yeah.
because, you know, she can respect you, you know, for you told her the truth. You told her where you were. You treated her with kindness and respect, and
Right.
in a way you went.
Plus, she had her own, she had to defend her own position, which she
Yes. She
did.
did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So, you know, I think it was a win-win. And so she's left with this lingering experience of having met you, hearing what you've got to say, and hearing what you've got to say and giving her something more to think about. And you know she is, you know she's thinking about it.
And
I wanted to try. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say that, you know, you could say in that situation, so how are we going to take care of the situation that happens is a woman finds herself pregnant through rape or, you know, birth control failure or whatever, and wishes not to carry through this pregnancy. How can we take care of that situation? What can we do? And you know, anyway, I have my ideas of what to do, but I won't tell you that.
I wanted to address something that Maribeth said because I think it's really interesting. You know, I from my generation, from the generation that I came from, I experienced an enormous amount of racism, which is unusual for somebody in my generation. But I never decided to hate anyone because of it. You know, so somebody asked me, how is it that you don't hate because of those experiences? And I said, I don't know. I can't articulate the reasons why, but in my mind, you know, it doesn't make sense to me. You know, I would say, why should I hate an entire group of people because of the individual experiences that I had with others that look like that group of people? That doesn't make any sense, you know? And I always tell people, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, what ethnic group they come from. There's going to be people that I dislike, and there are going to be people that I like. So that's kind of how I view it. I mean, I recognize history. I recognize we look different, but I think it's those differences that I like, that I enjoy, that makes, you know, our experiences much richer because we're able to come up with ideas and perspectives that we would not be able to come up with if we did not interact with each other. So
I'd like to comment on something Chuck said. He said the thing about the negative of politicizing things, and the way I would combat that would be to say, you know, that there's a real negative connotation I feel coming from you when you say something is politicized. Tell me what you don't like about politics, because chances are I don't like that either. And they might say, well, I don't like that, you know, they spied on certain people that were in the Senate. Well, I wouldn't like that either. And so you're finding some common ground. And then you have the door open to say, but tell me what might be good about politics. Are there some good things we could talk about? And just realizing, and even his conversation with the lady about abortion, you know, I would say to her, well, tell me what it is that you really, really offend you about abortion. And she's going to say, killing babies. And that's an opportunity to say, well, I don't want to kill babies either.
That's exactly what I said.
Yeah, that's
exactly what I said.
Yeah, I don't want to kill babies. And so you realize that, okay, there is some common ground here. Mm-hmm. You know, we may not be dead on the same page, but we do have a common goal. We don't, but how do we avoid that? You know, how do we, and so sometimes just, it goes back to a quote I heard someone, a minister, talking to atheists and agnostics, and he said, tell me about this God you don't believe in, because chances are I don't believe in that God either. And so I think we could apply that to a lot of things.
Yeah,
I think that can be applied to a lot of things. You know, tell me where you stand on this issue, because there's a good chance I'm pretty much on the same page with you. It's just we need to find a way to bring the circles closer together, like Miriam was saying. So anyway.
Say, if you don't have it, Greg, I'd get the little blue book, Lakoff's Little Blue Book.
Do you mean this one?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And there's a section in there specifically about family freedom. You remember the section, and it gives different ways of talking about ending pregnancies. Especially not using the A word, and it also talks about, when you're talking about ending pregnancies, you're not talking about babies at all.
No.
Right.
There's no baby, until a mother calls the fetus a baby. It's perfectly, now if you're a woman and you have and you're pregnant and you choose to call your fetus a baby, that's your choice. But it doesn't make it a baby. It's still a fetus until you actually give birth. And so, the more we can talk about what's going on prior to birth as a fetus, the more we can begin to reframe, the conversation, because conservatives are really good at framing.
Yeah, and they have focused everybody's attention on the baby, the end product, the baby. And we really need to focus on, before there's ever conception, we need to prevent that happening. And one of the most effective phrases, I think, is 100% of unwanted pregnancies are caused by men.
Yep.
Now that shifts the focus. And what do we do about that? Men have to, take that responsibility and, figure something out. It's always been up to the woman to protect herself, to, have the birth control in place, et cetera, et cetera. Men have never had that responsibility. So we really need to focus on that part of it and raising responsible young men. But also, vasectomies are reversible, just saying.
And also, it's what we're really concerned about most of the time is it's, the word birth control is a conservative word. We're really not concerned about that. We're concerned about pregnancy control. It's pregnancy control,
right?
That we're concerned about. And so if we can quit using the BC word, quit using the A word, quit using, the B word, it's a fetus, it belongs to a woman, until she decides whether or not she wants to help develop that fetus. Even scripture says that women give birth, nobody else gives it. You can't give something you don't own. Go ahead.
Could you clarify something more? Because I sat one time on a flight, I sat by this wonderful Episcopalian lady, a priest. She was a lady, and we somehow, we talked. Isn't it funny how you can meet strangers and get into really deep conversations? But somehow we got on the conversation of abortion, and she knew. I mean, she knew the Bible in its original language, which I always think is a plus because some things don't translate like we know. And so she would say, well, actually in the Torah, if we want to go way back, it says da 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 da, and she rattled it off. And she says, and what that means is the Hebrews believed that the spirit didn't enter the body. She says in one place it didn't enter the body until 40 days after conception. But she says, but then later on in the Torah it says that, and she rattled more off, and she goes, and that means the soul doesn't enter the body until 40 days after the birth. And she said, so we know there's this 40-day theme in the Bible. And so she said, really, if you think about it, if the soul is not there, it's not a human being. It's not really a human. And so that always stuck with me too. Do you know any background in that at all? Or
So the Muslims believe the same thing. So they believe that the soul of the child is not within the fetus until about 40 days or so, and then that's when it is considered a human being, you know. But prior to that, they don't consider it a human being because it doesn't have a soul.
Yeah. So I didn't, so that's another argument that, and there's so many gray areas. There's so many contradicting things. So how do we know? How do we know?
We don't.
So, boy, we went overtime on that one. So I'll pull
It was
up
very interesting.
our closing here.
Good day.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm a caring citizen.
I
occupy empathy.
I
Here highly resolved that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. I am a person with human rights. I care for my own safety and happiness and that of others. I'm the solution to expanding life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And for the support of this declaration, joining caring citizens, known and unknown, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, sacred honor.
All right.
All right.
See you guys next week.
Thank
See
you.
you next week. Thank
Bye.
you.
And by the way,